For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life.
Your key to financial opportunity.
Hello? Gee, is this Rachel?
Yes, it is. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good, good. Thanks for reaching out to me.
It's an interesting story. I knew all four of those people before they went on their escapade and the killing sprees that happened. I did know Daniel Remetta, Lisa Dunn, and Mark Walter.
Where are you from? Are you from Traverse City or are you from Suttons Bay?
I am Cedar, which is south of Suttons Bay.
Because I feel like I've interviewed a lot of people, but some of them either knew just Lisa and Dan Remetta, or some of them knew Mark Walter. It seems like there wasn't a lot of overlap. So it's really interesting that you knew all three of them.
Yes, I could tell you the story if you want to hear it.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
It's long-winded. Oh gosh, how far back do I go? I worked at the grocery store at NJ's in Lake Willona. And, of course, Mark Walter lived on the farm between Lake Willona and Suttons Bay.
Yeah.
And I had known his girlfriend at the time. Her name was Tina Rice.
Okay.
Okay, now, the interesting story that I wanted to share with you was that I had a roommate that I lived with just north of the store where I worked. And one night, this was a week before they took off out of town, they stopped over at my friend's and my house to borrow the phone because Mark had he was trying to get Tina to go with them out of town.
Okay.
With them meeting Lisa and Renetta.
Okay.
So they stopped at our apartment, and I was cooking dinner. It was later in the afternoon. And Mark was on the phone with girlfriend Tina, wanting her to go with them downstate, or wherever they were going to travel.
Mm-hmm.
And with Mark was Dan Remetta. And Mark was busy on the phone, and I was busy in the kitchen cooking, and I'm looking in, and I'm seeing, Dan was dressed all in black, and he was brooding. And I wanted to break the ice a little bit, and I had a couple Miller Lights, sitting in my refrigerator door. They've been banging that door every time I opened it since my birthday. I wanted to get rid of them, so I offered a beer to Dan. I never met him before.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me, he gave me a hard look, and he refused the beer. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe it wasn't his brand, or he was on probation for something he couldn't drink, and so I didn't press it. And I said, well, that's okay. And he studied my face. Now, I'm not sure if this happened either a Friday or a Saturday, but on Sunday we were closing up, my boss and I were closing up at NJ's, and this, we closed down about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday so we could have time with our family. And there was another accomplice. His name was Tim Hangstrom. Now, this kid, he was always in trouble. And he comes in to NJ's about that time to get himself a fifth. Either he's buying it for himself or for a young minor kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so the entire troop, except for Mark Walter, Mark had a 2-door car. Now, I'm really terrible with makes of cars. I'm not sure what kind of car, but NJ's store is sitting in a crossway. And it was, early March, and there was still ice on the road. And he was spending his time while Remetta and Dunn were in the store. They walked in the store with Tim Hangstrom, all three of them. Mark was busy, in the middle of the road spinning ditties with his car. And I remember that because I was so worried that he was going to lose control and crash into the glass window. And so the windows were fogged up, and every time the wind would blow, I could hear that the windows are just about ready to crack. Well, he's spinning his ditties, and Lisa's walking in behind Dan, and Tim, of course, is in the back distracting the boss. And so Dan came up to where I was at the checkout, and he wanted to pack cigarettes. Well, we keep all the cigarettes back behind us, behind the till, so I had to turn around from the customer in order to get the cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And unbeknownst to me, I read this article. It was either in the Detroit News or the Detroit Free Press 1 year after the 1 year anniversary. And they put this as a part of like a parade magazine. It was an update, a 1 year anniversary on this, on what had happened. Mm-hmm. And I found out reading that article that I was supposedly the first one to be killed for my money in my till. But as I turned around with my cigarettes, Dan was looking at me, and he recognized me as being the one who offered him that beer a day or two earlier. And he couldn't do it.
Wow.
And so I read it was either the Detroit News or the Detroit Free Press. They were trying to hijack a scheme. They were putting together a scheme at Snyder's Beach, which was about a mile away from the store. And that's where they hatched the plan that we were gonna be the first people that they robbed in order so they could have money to get out of town. And so, unbeknownst to me too, I was two weeks pregnant with my first child. And so when Dan, he bought the cigarettes, and he didn't hold me up, of course. He backed down because he recognized me. Mm. And wow. and so they were out the door, and I heard nothing until whatever happened at Kansas and Florida.
Yeah. Holy crap. Wow, you're lucky.
Yeah. Very lucky. It was one stupid bottle of Miller Lite.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's all I have to share with you.
That's great. So, it's funny that you're saying this. I've talked to so many people, and, I know, so I don't know if you know, but right before they left, they robbed a convenience store in Coatmish. So I'm guessing now that you're telling me this, because they didn't rob you and get any money for their trip, they had to commit the Coatmish robbery to get money to leave Michigan, is what I'm guessing. Because they did that right before they left town. And then they took off to Florida. So, wow.
Yeah, it's something I'll never forget. And so when I saw the ghosts of Fenton's Bay, and I saw your posting and how people wanted to forget, well, you just don't forget things like that, especially what I went through.
Yeah, of course. I can't imagine. I mean, you could have been their first victim, and who knows, things could be very different.
Right.
Wow. Do you happen to know somebody named Tom Cantrell?
Oh, vaguely, but no, he doesn't really ring a bell.
Okay.
No, I never met anyone by that name.
Okay, so what I was told, and according to the police files and stuff that we have, is a man named Tom Cantrell, who had recently gotten out for armed robbery himself, was also friends with Dan Remetta, and ended up traveling with them for a little while. And I'm trying to find if he left Michigan with them. He was in a bar in Alabama with them. They have that on record. And then he was, at some point, he was also in Florida with them. So now that you named the guy named Tim, he's come up as well, like somebody who was affiliated with them, but I didn't know he was with them right before that.
I don't think that Tim Hangstrom ever traveled with them.
No? Okay.
No, the one from Lake Illinois, no.
Okay.
That kid was a troublemaker. Every time, we have a local rag called the Illinois Enterprise. Okay. And I would catch him in that paper every other month.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't think he would have traveled with him.
What about, so like Mark and Lisa, from what I've heard from people in the community, like Mark was an altar boy prior to this and seemed to come from a good upbringing and seemed to be a pretty good kid. He had a stable job and whatever. And Lisa, the same. I mean, her dad was pretty influential in town. She was in 4-H camp and a bunch of things. So I'm wondering, like, how they got involved with Dan Rometta in the first place. It seems like his family, his siblings and himself were always in trouble. And there was a lot of conflict around them. So how two much younger, because they were both about a decade younger than him, how two, young kids that seemed to be in very different lifestyles got wrapped up with him, or how this whole thing, like, it just seems so odd that these two people who seemingly were doing pretty well got wrapped into this guy who had been in prison multiple times and was already causing a lot of trouble. Yeah, it's very weird.
I can't give you any idea on how that came together. I was just a few years older than them, and I did not travel in their circle.
Yeah. Did you go to...
I had a different... So the only connection I had was the roommate that I had. Her name was unheard. Okay. And she was a friend of Mark Walter's girlfriend, Tina Rice.
Okay, gotcha.
Who refused to go out of town with him on that trip.
Well, good for her.
And they used our... Yeah, good for her. That's so true.
Yeah.
That's why they stopped, because they knew that we had a phone, and he was bound and determined whether Dan was pushing him to have her on board or it was just Mark's idea. We'll never know.
Yeah, this adds a whole other... I didn't know how much they were trying to do in Michigan in their hometowns, where people knew them and would recognize them. My suspicions were that they left so they could get away with this stuff. People would never guess who they were. But it looks like they were still trying to do this in town. Well...
Oh, definitely. If you come across, I've been trying to locate the same issue. It happened exactly a year after. It was the 1-year anniversary. It's a parade-type magazine that was in the Detroit News and the Detroit Free Press. It really dived into it.
One other question. Are you still friends with Tina Rice?
Oh, yes, I know her. She runs a laundromat in Sutton Bay.
Okay. I would love to speak to her about Mark. Do you know if she would be willing to talk to you?
I don't know, and I really don't know. If you were engaged from all those people who answered you on Facebook.
Yeah.
She might be of the same mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know the reason I talked to you about wanting this to be confidential is just about everybody that posted on that site. I work with them. I know them. I work with them on a daily basis, and I don't want them to know that I talk to you.
Yeah, no, I understand. No worries.
So I would get blowback just the same as you did.
Yeah, no, I see it. I'm actually, somebody else has written to me, who I'm speaking with tomorrow. And they're willing to go on record, but they want to be anonymous and they want us to change their voice. So, and I said, that's fine. But they said they have a lot of stories to share and we're familiar with all of these people. But they don't want any repercussions, as you can see from the Facebook stuff. So, which I understand. It's a small town and it's hard to get away from that stuff if, things went bad. So totally fine. I really appreciate you sharing all this with me though.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. I'm glad I don't have a whole lot of many people to tell this to.
Death rides the highway.
think, feel, and understand the world around you with Spoon River Gothic Podcast, because we go where the others don't. We dive deeper. And if you want to plunge even deeper into our true crime tales, please subscribe to Spoon River Gothic Agency, that's SRG Agency, at www.patreon.com/Spoon River Gothic Podcast, and access the Spoon River Gothic Podcast case file for bonus weekly episodes available on Spotify, and also included in the Patreon case file are investigative materials, such as exclusive audio interviews, trial footage, police files, court documents, photos, diagrams, and more to accompany each Season 2 episode of Death Rides the Highway. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. It means more than you know in this cutthroat world. And until next time, work hard, party hard, keep a vigilant eye over your shoulder, and don't forget to watch each other's backs. This is a sideways world we are living in. And again, that's www.patreon.com/Spoon River Gothic Podcast. Subscribe now, because there's always more to the story.
Ever wonder how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for anyone to see? More than you think. Your name, contact info, social security number, home address, and even information about your family members is all being compiled by data brokers and sold to the highest bidders online. That means anyone on the web, criminal or investigator, can get your private details, which, as true crime enthusiasts know all too well, increases your risk of identity theft, phishing scams, harassment, stalking, and unwanted phone calls. As a podcast that exists publicly and shares our opinions online, we are hyper aware of safety and security, and all this data being so easily searchable on the internet can have real-life consequences. This is why Spoon River Gothic is proud to partner with Delete Me, the #1 service in online data removal. Delete Me finds and removes any information you don't want online and makes sure it stays off. Their dedicated team finds and removes your personal info from the largest people search databases and helps prevent potential ID theft, doxing, stalking, and phishing scams in the process. That's why I personally recommend Delete Me for protecting yourself and your personal information. Sign up at joindeleteme.com/spoonriver and provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, and their experts will take it from there. As part of their subscription service, you will even receive personalized privacy reports showing what they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. Their experts are always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want accessible online. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal info off the web and making your personal profile no longer anyone's to sell. So join us at deleteme.com/spoonriver, because no one wants to be a victim nor a suspect. So get protected, and the next time a case hits too close to home, you won't find yourself asking the stranger on the other end of the phone, "How did you get my number?" Go to joindeleteme.com/spoonriver and get started today.